Yeah.
I call the November 25th, 2019 meeting of the Portsmouth City Council, which is a work session to order. And Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Battle.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Glover.
Here.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke.
Here.
Mr. Moody.
Here.
Ms. Simmons.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And we have a need to go into closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Okay, I move to go into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A.1 for the purpose of interviewing, discussing, and considering prospective candidates for and appointees to boards and commissions.
Thank you. And I misspoke. I think the current proper terminology is closed meeting, so I apologize to anybody.
Second.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
To both.
On the motion to go into closed meeting. Karen, now will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Battle.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Glover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Moody.
Yes.
Ms. Simmons.
Yes.
Mayor Rowe.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're in closed session.
Yes, sir. Mr. Battle.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Glover.
Yes.
Mrs. Lucas-Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Moody.
Yes.
Ms. Simmons.
Yes.
Mayor Rowe.
Yes. We're out of close. We're going to go back into closed session after we finish our work session. Okay? With that-
Is it on the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay. I'll get the retirement board.
Okay.
Hello, retirement board.
Yes.
Will you all have a seat, please, at the table?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Be back.
Come on down.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's your turn.
Yeah.
For the consultants.
And hello again.
Hello again.
It's literally just me and you over here.
Someone get the city manager.
You're good for chairman, right? You're good to be chairman, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Good to see you.
There she
The two
is.
of you all made it.
Another year. She said, well, next year, after next year.
Yeah.
She's got one more year.
Here it is, on the end is one. Oh, there's, okay.
She goes there today.
Interesting stuff.
Read that thing. I've got a good copy.
Oh, I'm good.
That's it.
Plus I got my.
Thank you all. We're back in order. This is a joint meeting between the City Council and our Retirement Board. And let me first apologize for, and I do apologize for keeping you 25 minutes before you came in. We're in closed session and interviewing applicants for other boards and commissions. And again, apologize for that. Most importantly, I want to thank you, and I do thank you for what you do for our city. You do this on a volunteer basis, and what you do is really, really important. With that, because there are three members of the Retirement Board, and that constitutes a public meeting, I'll allow the chair to call your meeting to order.
All right, thank you, Mayor Rowe. We'll officially call the Portsmouth Supplemental Retirement Board meeting to order.
Thank you, ma'am. And again, it might be appropriate for us to go around the table and introduce ourselves. And we'll start with Shannon.
Shannon Glover.
Shannon's our liaison to the Retirement Board, as you know.
Nathan Clark.
Lisa Lucas-Burke.
Bill Moody.
Paul Battle.
Elizabeth Simmons.
Laura Bellin.
And
Patty Phillips, interim CFO.
John Rowe. Dr. Pat.
Gets ready for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
David Holly.
Apologize.
Landon Moore.
Good night.
Thank you.
Ready, Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, good evening. This evening, there will be a three-part presentation relating to the city's retirement systems. The first presenter, Mrs. Laura Bellin, Chair of the Portsmouth Supplemental Retirement Board, will provide an overview of the status of the retirement systems. The second presenter, Mr. Andre Stewart, Managing Consultant Actuary Director with John Hancock, will provide an actuarial projection for the retirement systems. And lastly, Mr. Brian Bimbaum of Greystone Consulting will provide an overview of the retirement systems, investment strategies, and results. The second presenter this evening is from Maryview Bon Secours, Mrs. Amy Carrier. They are out in the foyer, and they will come in when it's time to present. President of Bon Secours, Virginia, will provide an exciting update on the Bon Secours Maryview Medical Center. And lastly, members of City Council, this evening you will have an opportunity to discuss the 2020 meeting schedule for City Council. Mrs. Bellin.
All right, thank you. Let's say good evening again.
Good evening.
And thank you, Honorable Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Lucas Burton, City Manager Dr. Patton, and members of the council. We are pleased to be able to give you an update on the financial status of our retirement systems. And doing that, I want to get started with just a brief presentation. And then I also want to invite our other board members to join in and comments and invite your questions as well. Where do I point? Who's driving? Okay, thank you. All right. Want to let you know that we do meet regularly, and on a quarterly basis, we have meetings with our support group, which is John Hancock and also Greystone Consulting, and we'll hear from them later. We are consisting of 7 voting members. 1 is a retiree of the city. 6 are either retirees or non-employees. And then we have financial and investment experience and knowledge. And both Landon and David are members who have come to our board in the last couple of years to have that type of experience, and we really have welcomed that. Some of the key responsibilities of the board: we are responsible for establishing, modifying, and or affirming our investment policy. We also are responsible for making sure that we have strategies in place that are reasonable and that allow the system to achieve its goals and objectives. In that vein, we established an investment committee, and which Landon leads, and that committee is responsible for helping us to work with both Greystone to establish the allocations and make sure that everything is in line with the investment committee rules that we've put in place. Finally, but not limited to, we also hear appeals related to eligibility for retirement benefits. I represent the chair, Laura Bellin, and Landon is our vice. And we also have David Holly here. Our other members had other commitments during this holiday season. That's pretty much expected that they would have other commitments. We also are supported by Director of Human Resources, Ms. Gooden, and Patty Phillips, who's our interim CFO, along with Mr. Glover, who has been faithful to it, and we appreciate his presence, along with our city attorney, Mr. Ashby, Mr. Challenger, who is also an assistant city attorney, Rose McKinney, who is a human resource director, and then our executive secretary. I mentioned briefly John Hancock and Greystone. We have representatives from both of those companies here with us today, and you'll be hearing from them later, and we'll introduce them at that time. The board is in charge of, what I want to say is John Hancock is our administrator, and they do the actuarial and compliance. They make sure that the city employees' website is maintained for those retirees, and they also provide education for city employees regarding retirement benefits and things of that nature. Greystone, which is a part of Morgan Stanley, also serves as our discretionary investment manager, and they've been in that capacity since October of 2018. Prior to that, they were still part of our support group, but they were in a non-discretionary position, and they'll talk about that more when Brian comes up. This is just an overview of the percentage of our funding levels. As you can see here, fire and police, we're at almost 68% now, and you see the actual numbers there. The supplemental systems are 71% funded, and you see the other numbers there. And we'll dive into those numbers a little more in a few minutes. This is a listing of both active, vested, and those who are already receiving benefits, as you can see from the list here. Very few people in the active category, where the majority of the people are in the in-pay group. I mentioned earlier that we are now working in a discretionary relationship with Greystone, and we've had a really good year in terms of since they've taken over, since they've been supporting us. As you can see from the numbers here, we've had a quite strong year. From the October of 2018 to June of 2019, you can see that we're almost at a 12% return on our investment, with an even better return on the year to date with 15.7%. I'm sure council is familiar with the obligation bonds, so I feel really weird even talking with you about that. But you can see that that infusion over the next 3 years is really going to help shore up some of the things that we're lacking there. We're estimated to be at 74% funding by the year 2028, and the actuary will get into more details there. The long-term goal, of course, is to be at 80%, and we know that there are going to be some challenges there, and we look forward to your support in meeting those. If there are no questions, I'll turn it over to Andre, who is the actuary with John Hancock.
Any questions?
Any questions? Anybody?
Good.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, Council. I prepared 10-year projections of key metrics for the systems, those key metrics being the actuarially determined contribution, the contribution that we recommend that you make on an annual basis, the unfunded liability, as well as another way of measuring the funded status, the funded ratio, as well as a projection of the benefit payments in the plan. Just to level set, we've assumed that the investments would return 7.25% on an annual basis, as well as assuming that the city would make the actuarially determined contribution. And it also reflects the additional funding as a result of the refinancing of the pension obligation bonds. So I will point out the light blue bars represent the actuarially determined contributions. For fiscal year ending 2019, that was $7.7 million, increasing to $8.1 million. At least that's the estimate. These are long-term projections, and one thing we know is that if the assumptions, or if experience deviates from the assumptions, which they actually likely will, these numbers will change. But we do anticipate contributions increasing for the next few years and then leveling off in 2025. So the The line bar represents the funded percentage or funded ratio, the percentage of liabilities that are covered by the assets. And in 2019, it's 67.9%. And you can see that it remains pretty level, drops slightly. But what I think is just as important is that you have to take more than one metric into account. So while the funded status or funded ratio remains level, the unfunded liability, the amount of liabilities that are not covered by the assets, that's actually shrinking over time. So that's the amount of liabilities that need to be funded either through investments or contributions. And I think that's probably more critical than the funded percentage. Any questions?
Any questions? Council?
These results are for the supplemental system. Similar story, except that the unfunded liability is projected to increase this year, but then declining in future years. Likewise, the actuarially determined contribution will increase over the next 5 or 6 years and then level off at about $2.7 million. While the funded percentage or funded status is declining from 71% to about 68% in 2023, the unfunded liability also declines outside of that first year. So again, I think that you have to take both of those into account when thinking about the health of the plan, not just the funded ratio, but what is that dollar amount that represents the shortfall? And that dollar amount is expected to decrease.
Who's got a question?
It's not to be crude, but is that also because of the age and health of the participants?
Is what also because of the
That
age?
The decline?
the decline, yeah.
It's a combination of fewer participants
Fewer
being due a
participants.
benefit,
Okay,
asset performance, as well as contributions.
because one's going up and then.
That's right. So your contributions are expected to increase. Your benefit payments are expected to decline because there'll be fewer participants receiving a benefit.
Okay.
Thereby, your liabilities are decreasing at a faster rate than your assets.
Thank you.
Do you have an annual performance review available?
In terms of the investment performance, I think Brian's going to cover that in the next section.
Your ADC,
Well-
I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead. Go ahead, Paul. You have the floor.
Well, what position does Greystone have in the gamut of investment? I see we have 3 investors to handle the pension plan, which is your company and then 2 other companies. What do your company give to the city? What are you paid to do for the city, your company?
So I represent John Hancock. We provide administration of the pension plan as well as the actuarial services, determining the contributions as well as preparing financials for the CAFR.
Is that standard operating procedure for pension plans?
Correct.
Your combined ADC is roughly 9.9 million annually. I'm trying to interpolate your roughly 10.
About $10.6 million.
6, okay.
Roughly 10.
Currently.
Currently.
Correct. Any other questions on this information for you?
I guess it was probably, so we're expected to be funded by 2028 at 74%, but our goal is still 80%? Is it where we're supposed to be?
So as far as I'm concerned, there's no hard and fast rule around where you need to be. Obviously, you want to have assets that can fund the benefits of participants now as well in the future.
Right.
And that's the purpose of the investment fund and the investment strategy, as well as the actuarially determined contribution. My understanding is that the city is targeting 80%, and the funding method or the contribution strategy will eventually get the plans to 80% funded.
Now, is your company using its funds to invest? Or are they just strictly investing the city funds?
I believe Brian's going to cover the
We don't invest
investments.
anything.
They're the
So
planning-
so John Hancock, again, we represent, or we provide the administration of the plan, the record keeping. So we pay the benefits to participants as well as the actuarial services. So I determine what the contributions should be based on the current level of assets and liabilities. But I don't provide investment advice, nor do, as far as I understand, nor are the funds invested in, or nor the assets invested in our funds.
Checks come through them to the retirees.
All right, let's-
But you don't know whether your subsidiaries or you use your funds to invest or the city's funds?
Well, it's this, only the city's assets are in the trust and paying the benefits.
Right, so then the fund, I'll defer the questions.
Mr. Battle, John Hancock does none of the investing themselves. That's all Greystone.
No,
Okay.
you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm asking whose money is being used in the investment. You see, as the manager, John Hancock could invest his money, and our money is in escrow as an insurance, you know.
Right. I understand what
And
you're
that,
saying.
and that's what I'm saying.
I believe it's city money that's being invested, correct,
You
Brian?
believe it's city money?
I'm sorry?
You believe it's city money?
No, it is city money.
Greystone will address that. I think they'll be able to answer your question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure they will.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions on the
Bottom
projection?
line is that John Hancock does none of the investing for the city or the advising. You administer the plan.
Administer the plan and provide actuarial
Make sure that the
services.
retirees get their check.
Right.
Well, let me just say this. Our retirement system is losing money. And I don't like it. And I want to know how we can stop losing this money. How can we immediately turn around? I want to know the reasons why we lost this money. And I want 5 years of performance review. And I want to know what you guys are going to do to ensure and diversify in a better fashion that we're not going to lose this money like this.
Well, let's park your question because that question is for the people who do the investing. And again, John Hancock does none of that. And so your question is good and valid. And I'm sure our next presenter, which is really the investment manager, will address that question. These folks are the bureaucrats who administer the program. They're the ones that make sure that the retirees get paid.
I don't know if I've ever been referred to as a bureaucrat, but
Important people.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead.
okay, great. So the next two slides represent the cash flows for each of the respective systems. So I know there are a lot of colors here, but in general, the items that are above the line represent positive cash flows. The items that are below the zero line represent negative cash flows. So the benefit payments being paid from the plan are represented by the dark blue line that's below the zero axis. The contribution's always positive, represented by the light yellow bars. And the investments in light blue, at least in this bar, all above the line. The investment return has been positive for the past 5 years. The one thing I will note is that in just about every year except for 2017, in spite of positive investment return, the cash flows have been negative. And that is primarily a result of the size of the benefit payments that are being made out of the plan in relation to the size of the assets. So in 2017, where the cash flows were a net positive $1.4 million. I believe the investment return for that year was about 11%. So it takes about a 10% return, investment return every year, coupled with the actuarially determined contributions to avoid negative cash flows. Similar story for the supplemental system as for the fire and police plan. 2017, the 1 year, actually for this plan, the cash flows were a net negative, very small, $500,000 in comparison to the other years. But again, the investment return was close to 11% to result in that cash flow that was nearly break even.
So the total benefit payment is roughly 30.3 million?
Yep, $30.3 million.
Yeah.
So it's about 14% of the asset base, which is pretty significant. The plans are very mature, given that just about all the participants are receiving benefits. So that's consistent with what we would expect. Questions? So these bullet points just summarize what I previously mentioned. The benefit payments are quite significant in relation to the size of the assets as well as the liabilities. Negative cash flows result in a declining funded percentage, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the unfunded liability, the actual dollar amount that is not covered by the assets, is increasing. That actual dollar amount is projected to decrease over this projection period. And then lastly, the last bullet point here, based on the funding method that's employed, that funding method will drive the plans to 100% funded by the year 2037. Any questions?
Any questions, Paul?
And you are the manager of our account. What does that mean?
I'm the actuary for the plan, so I develop the finances as well as the contribution requirements of the plan.
And then you distribute other tasks to subsidiaries.
So the other function that my firm performs is the administration or record keeping for the plan. So we also distribute benefits to participants of the
Do
plan.
you do oversight,
Oversight of,
Greystone, and the other?
no, that's not our responsibility.
Oh. Well, who does oversight?
The retirement board.
The board.
Retirement board does that.
Retirement board.
And Mayor,
Yes.
I may be a little off track, but I think for the benefit of the public, I think it's important for us to stop a minute and recognize the fact that our retirement board, the constitution of our retirement board was greatly changed a few years ago, in part to us insisting on changing the complement to include people who had financial investment experience, to include the two members who are here, who I'd like to stop and let them tell the public who they are and what they do for a living that they are doing for us as volunteers, because I think that's important
That's a good point. And I think before we do that,
as we transition to Greystone.
before we do that, I think we need to, for the public again, particularly for people who watch this on a replay, that we're talking about two halves of an apple, if I could use that metaphor. One half is the administration, what it takes to determine what the benefits are and get the checks to our employees, to our retirees. And that's what you do.
Correct.
You have nothing to do with the other half, which is the investments. You don't advise, you don't manage, you don't direct, you don't pick the funds or anything.
Correct.
And so your position tonight is, again, pardon the phrase, you're the bureaucrat who determines how much that benefit is and make sure that the money is there for those benefits to be paid. you tell the city that they need to come up with an annual required contribution. The investment is done by another group, not associated with you in any way, that is managed by the retirement board. They report directly to the retirement
There's no
board.
conflict of interest with
They
John
don't-
Hancock
they don't
and the
report.
investment.
Okay, with that, would you all tell the council and the public your background?
I'll go first. So I currently work for Smithfield Foods, and I'm the Director of Investment Management for Smithfield. We have a company-sponsored pension plan. Unlike this one, we're a public corporate, used to be a public corporation, but a private corporation. We have a little bit different rules than a municipal or a government plan, but it's very similar to the way that we manage the plans at Smithfield to what is done for the city. And I've been working for Smithfield for 12 years now, about half of which has been on the pension. And prior to that, I have some experience working for an insurance company and also education and finance and investing background.
David?
I own an investment firm, a small investment firm. I do active management of my clients' assets. We have about 125 clients in our firm that, again, we do active management, and we buy and sell as the economy changes, as it's done lately. I've been doing it for about 30 years, and we have been doing a fairly good job for our clients.
Okay, with that, let's make sure that we stay on track, though, with this part of our presentation, which is the administration of our
Correct.
plan. Do you have any other?
I think I have 2 more slides that I can cover pretty quickly. So again, this is the cash flows for the plan in the last fiscal year. You've seen these numbers previously, but just want to draw your attention to the net cash flows for each of the systems in comparison to the assets of $209 million at the end of, or on November 20th. So the cash flows, even though they're negative, there's ample assets to support that negative cash flow at this point in time. Any questions?
Any questions?
So with that, I will hand the mic.
Since we don't have a consultant to speak to, I just wanted to mention the other post-employment benefits, which is the retiree health care is, we provide that, and we use that on a pay-as-you-go basis, over $2.4 million in 2019, and there's $4.2 million held in trust at the VML VACO Pool Trust. It was a statewide trust, and I just wanted to mention that. And with that,
Before you move on,
Yeah.
I think it's important that we ask this question. That's for all 3 retirement plans. Is that correct?
yes.
BRS and...
Thank you. Very good.
Yes.
And I think Brian is up next.
Any questions? Would you introduce yourself and explain the investment responsibility that you have?
I would be happy to. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Dr. Patton, Chairwoman Bellin, thank you all again for the opportunity to be before you today. It's good to be here and following up on our last meeting together from September. Maybe before I get into the presentation, let me just talk about the relationship between John Hancock and Greystone and why it's very different. Mr. Mayor, you talked about 2 sides of the same apple, and that's exactly right. John Hancock and Andre and his team are responsible for the liability side of the equation. So how much goes out in benefits, how much cash needs to come in to fund those benefits, we have no interaction with respect to the liabilities. What we do is advise the retirement board on the investing of the assets. And that distinction between the actuary and the investment manager is very, very common and a best practice, particularly in the realm of public retirement systems.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor, my name, again, is Brian Birnbaum, and I'm a senior consultant with Greystone Consulting. Greystone Consulting is the institutional consulting arm of Morgan Stanley. So we work with municipalities like the city of Portsmouth. We work with corporate pension plans, endowments, and foundations. We help these institutional investors develop and devise investment programs and strategies that are designed to be diversified, to achieve the objectives that they're trying to achieve, do so in a very cost-effective way, and to minimize the ultimate cost of those plans. I've been with Greystone for about 3.5 years now, but I've been in this business for over 25. I've worked my entire career with public retirement systems, both at the municipal level and the state level. Just to give you some of the clients I've worked with in the past, the state of Florida, the state of Colorado, Nebraska, Wisconsin. These are multi-billion-dollar public retirement systems that are investing taxpayer money to fund the retirements of public employees. So I know the issues that the city is facing because I've dealt with these same issues at other municipalities and at the state level my entire career. So as questions come up, please do ask away. This is a little bit about Greystone. We advise on over $300 billion in client assets. Again, these are traditional institutional investors like the City of Portsmouth's retirement system. If you looked at the public funds that we work with, and this is data as of the end of 2018, we worked with about $22 billion in public retirement system assets. Again, municipalities and governments that are very similar to the City of Portsmouth. We talked about this the last time in September. Our relationship with the City of Portsmouth really got underway in October of last year, where we responded to an RFP that was issued by the retirement board for a discretionary investment manager. We met with the retirement board, and we were ultimately selected to provide those services to the City of Portsmouth, and we've been doing so since October 31st of last year. Prior to that role with the city, we had a much more limited role with the city where we were just reporting on the investment performance of a single manager, one of the managers that the city used. We did not have broad purview of the city's asset allocation strategy, risk management, governance, any of those things. We simply reported on the performance of a single manager. So we can talk about performance, but know that the relationship between Greystone and the City of Portsmouth and the long-term track record of the City of Portsmouth Pension Fund, while it's been good, we've only been around in the capacity we're currently serving in for a very limited time, and we can talk about the performance since then. Since October of last year, we've worked with the board to dramatically restructure the investment program. And the chart here on the left-hand side of this page just takes a snapshot of how the portfolio was invested prior to our involvement and the way it's invested today. You can see we've made some pretty significant changes to the composition of the portfolio, and with the board's help, we were able to improve the diversification of the plan. We've used lower cost, better returning managers than were in place prior to our involvement. We've done a lot of things to improve not only diversification but the return potential of the plan, and we'll go through some of the results that we've been able to achieve. The final bullet point on the bottom, I think, is an important one there. Prior to our involvement, the fees that the city pension plan was paying to its investment managers was 0.6%. Through our involvement, we've got those fees down to 48 basis points, 0.48%. So we're able to do all these things, improve the opportunities for returns for the plan, and we were able to do so while lowering cost at the same time.
Very good.
So here are the results. These are plan year returns. Plan year would be the 12-month period ending June 30 of each of those years listed there. So the way to read this chart is the plan year ending 6/30 for 2013, that first row would be the 12-month return ending June 30 of 2013. So the return for the pension plans were 12%. The benchmark was about 7%, so the difference between those two is about 5 percentage points. And we go through that exercise for each of the plan years. While I wish I can take credit for that, I can tell you we weren't around back in 2013. We started to get involved in 2017. Again, on a much more limited basis, but in the capacity that we're working in today, was October 31st of 2018. Some years you'll see are better than others. Some years the return exceeds the actuarial return assumption of 7.25%, and some years it does so by a significant margin. Other years the return trails. That's going to be driven by how stocks do during that 12-month period. If stocks do well, we will do well, and the city will do well. When stocks do poorly, the returns go down. Now, our job as your investment manager and working with the board is to figure out what the right mix of assets is to be able to generate a consistent return over a period of time and minimize the ultimate cost to the city of providing the defined benefit to our retirees. And we do that by understanding what the risk tolerance of the board is and what the capacity for the city is to kick in cash to the pension system. And we know that's, like any municipality, quite frankly, it's a struggle. And so we need to balance those risk and return objectives. We're trying to generate strong returns, but we don't want to bet the house, because when things go wrong, that means more cash contributions from the city. If we stepped aside from the individual plan year returns, so moving away from 12-month returns and looking at a longer-term history, that's what's shown at the bottom of the page. So the 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years, ending June 30 of 2019, you can see the results there. 3 years, 7.6%. 5 years, a little bit below the return assumption of 5%, and then for 7 years, right at the return assumption. Importantly, when we compare each one of those returns to a benchmark, and the benchmark simply represents how much do we invest in stocks and bonds and real estate, and it assumes what if we just earn broad market returns in each of those asset categories. In each of these instances, on the bottom of this page, our return, net of fees, has exceeded the benchmark. So that means the managers we're picking, the strategies we have in place, are doing better than what the markets are providing. Here's the results since 10/31 of last year. Again, this is the point at which our new relationship was incepted with the city and the retirement board. This is through June of this past year. We're up 11.5%. That benchmark is up 9.7%, so we're beating the benchmark by almost 2 percentage points over that period of time. Happy to give you a little bit of an update. We just had the third quarter meeting with the retirement board a couple of weeks ago, at which we presented our results. Through September, we were up 15.7% for the 9 months ending September. And the benchmark's return was 14.3%. So we're beating the benchmark by about 1.5 percentage points. And before I came here today, I did a little bit back of the envelope calculation about October. And month to date for November through Friday, we're up through Friday on a year-to-date basis of about 18.5% for the year.
Year to date.
Year to date. And let me just put that in dollars. Again, these are estimates. That's $35 million that we have in assets because of the returns that we've been able to generate in conjunction with the retirement board.
Can you contrast the last quarter of last year to this past quarter?
The last quarter, the fourth quarter of 2018 was one of the worst that we've had since the global financial crisis.
Yep. That's a collective we of the nation.
That's correct. Markets were down. Equity markets globally were down 15 to 20%. And that resulted in a full calendar year 2018 that looked
Dismal.
unimpressive. 2018 was a year that got off to a rocking start, and the bottom fell out in the fourth quarter. And we've talked to the retirement board about what was driving that and why the results were what they were in the fourth quarter. The Fed changed strategies. The Fed hiked interest rates when the market didn't think it was going to. There's the on-again, off-again trade negotiations between the United States and China. There was a lot going on in the fourth quarter that caught the market by surprise. And the market sold off pretty significantly, particularly in the month of December. We're in a different environment today than we were back then. And markets continue to grind a little bit higher each day in 2019 versus 2018. It might be helpful to talk about, because I know that the questions came up about what we do, maybe in a little bit more detail. So I talked about the fact that we don't get involved in a lot of the things that Andre does on the actuarial side. We use a lot of the information that Andre provides in terms of what the expected cash flows of the pension plan are to meet the benefit payments of our retirees and the expected cash contributions of the city. We have our models, and we figure out what a reasonable mix of stocks and bonds would be to be able to achieve sufficient levels of return, again, consistent with the risk tolerance of the board. And then it becomes an issue of, once we work with the board in determining what the right mix of stocks and bonds and real estate is, it's then going out to find the very best managers in the world to go and buy the individual stocks and bonds. We do not buy Apple or Amazon or Treasury bonds on behalf of the pension fund. We go out and hire third-party managers who we believe are the best at what they do to do that on behalf of the city. So neither Morgan Stanley or Greystone nor John Hancock as the actuary are buying and selling stocks and bonds. We outsource that to somebody else.
You can change out those managers on a moment's notice.
You monitor them.
We do. So we have the discretion to terminate any manager that isn't living up to our expectations. We do not have to go to the board for approval. We will tell the board, this is what we did and this is why we did it. But we can change a manager in a day or two if the need arises.
And this is pretty standard.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Dr. Patton, I'd like to speak to this lady if I could for a second. Okay. Because I don't know who to direct, what I need to direct to. Since she is our representative for the city, I'd like to speak to her. In 2013, we borrowed money that brought this account up to $300 million.
Yes, sir.
We were 80% sovereign. The first year, because of the latitude that we give the investment communities, we invested $10 million to a pig farm in New Mexico. At the onset, we lost $4 million the day of the investment. We were not satisfied at that point, so we decided to take our funding out. We took our funding out, which the penalty was another $1 million. So we made a $10 million investment, and for safety's sake, we ran from it with the $5 million. Now, the investors seem to have a latitude for investment to handle risky stocks. Because if we started out with 300 million, and at this point we are 229,
209, yes.
yes ma'am. We've had a problem for a long time. Now, we had a stress test at the onset, and the stress test said that we should be making money for the next 20 years, even in bad times, with the proper investors handling our accounts. Now, to keep our account at 80%, this body was told that we needed 7.2% to make the money on our account.
On average, yeah.
Right. Now it's 10%, understandably. But I can't sit by to see the people that I'm representing lose money like that, and we treat it as a mere commodity, because it's not standard operating procedure in a climate like today. So we get justifications of, well, Norfolk's losing money, well, Virginia Beach, well, all of the cities are losing money. Then all of the cities had the same problem, a poor investment. Folks found it, yes ma'am. So I'm not here to do anything other than protest by saying, we're not gonna lose money like this. Not on a market like this. Not when a layman. Thank you.
I can make a comment.
Hold on a second. Please, are you finished, Paul?
Now, I've noticed that the fees are excessive. They're not the normal fees. And fees are negotiable anyway. Our board members with the experience should know that. Now, again, these folks are seniors. I don't want to be told that in 2028 we'll be 74% solvent. I want us to get solvent as much sooner than that, with an atmosphere that the market is carrying at this time. With the 300 million that we started out with, we could have played safe.
Okay. Chair recognizes Shannon.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A couple of things I just want to make clear. You know, we have done extremely well. We have done well. Under the current management that we have, when you guys came in last year, I was just coming on to council. I had an opportunity to sit with members of the retirement board and members of Greystone and John Hancock. And based on the information that I see, we are doing well. The benchmark of the 7.25%, we have been able to meet that for the most part. That's the benchmark. But as an investment strategy and what we are doing, I can say with a high degree of certainty that we are doing extremely well. I understand the the things that we still have to overcome. They would have been present in any situation, but again, I just want to make that clear that our investments are doing well. We are headed in the right direction, and we have the appropriate management, and you all have the appropriate opportunity to do what you need to do.
Before I recognize Dr. Patton, will you go to slide 6, please? Because I think that's germane to what we're talking about. Yeah, which gives the performance on a 12-month basis. And so in 2013, it was 12%, which was better than the benchmark. In 2014 was 14%, which was better than the benchmark. Is that the way to interpret that?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Right. So those were good years.
Yes.
There were years that we made money of a good magnitude.
Can I just,
May.
given that there is not a negative sign in front of any of these numbers, means that we're not losing money.
That's right.
Even in 2015, 0.2%, that's a positive number, not a great one.
Yeah.
We did not lose money that year.
But the important thing that's not on that slide, because it's not in your half of the apple, is what's happening on the liability side, which could be off the chart.
Correct.
Dr. Patton?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, members of City Council, Mr. Bimbrom started by saying, in October of 2018, and going back to 13 and back how far, way predating me, we had a single investor. We did not have Greystone as an investor. And that single investor during that time, before council has completely changed the makeup, you all have completely changed the makeup of the retirement board, that single investor pretty much made the decisions, a single person, of how monies were being invested. Now we have working with us since 2018, one of the major investment corporations in the world working with us, whereas for years the city did not have that, nor the board had it. It was a single human being that board at that time wanted to keep that one individual, one person, making the decisions of how the city was investing its money and what the city invested in. That is completely changed with new council leadership.
Right. But I think it's also important to point out that even then,
It didn't lose.
we had returns of 12% and 14%. That was beating the
Seven.
the benchmark.
Would beat the benchmark over 70%.
Right. So we've been
Yeah.
doing well with
Yes, sir.
our big.
I'll recognize you, then I'll come back to Paul. Sir,
I'm sorry.
I'm recognizing the speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it is to address some of the comments that Councilman Battle mentioned earlier. So if we went back to July 1st of 2013, the value of the pension funds back then was $258 million. We fast forward to July 1st of 2019, knowing that we paid benefits over that, 7-year period. We're contributing $10 million, roughly, these are round numbers, we're contributing $10 million a year, we're paying out $30 million a year in benefit. That's $20 million net
That's right.
out of the fund every single year. That adds up over that 6 years in between 2013 and 2019 to $120 million. So you take 258, again, these are back of the envelope. Take 258 million, you subtract 120 million in net outflows from the fund, you get $138 million.
Correct.
Today, we're at about 209 million. So the difference between that 138 and the 209 we have today
That's what you've earned.
are what the capital markets are doing for us.
That's right.
The investment returns that we're earning.
And at the same time, because we don't negotiate the fees, it takes us a longer time to climb out of the hole. Now, when we have a bad year and the fees are 6.2 plus 80,000 for the advisory manager's fee, you're talking about each year we're paying the management companies $7 million or $6 million plus. So how are we gonna get out of this hole unless we cut the expenditures?
All right, please speak to that.
The total fees, there's two components to fees. There's the fee that we earn for all the stuff we do for the retirement board, asset allocation, reporting on performance, hiring and firing managers. We receive 0.1% of assets as our fee. That's $200,000 a year. The investment managers that get hired, on average, cost 0.4%.
And you negotiate those fees?
We negotiate those fees on behalf of the city. So you add those two together, we're at 0.5%.
Right.
I can tell you, for a plan this size, when you're the state of Florida and you're investing $200 billion, your fees are 20 to 30 basis points.
State of Florida?
Yes, sir. For a plan this size,
We're in Florida?
No.
no, I'm giving you an example.
If you're in Florida.
The state of Virginia Virginia retirement system is probably paying 30 basis points in fees. Probably. We're paying all in 50. For a plan this size, I would say the average is probably between 50 and 60.
Right. Which is represented on page 5.
Yes, sir.
Make one more comment on fees. Just for a little bit more context, Smithfield, we have about $2 billion in assets. We don't pay much less than what the city of Portsmouth is paying with only $200 million of assets. So I mean, from my experience, I think those fees are very competitive. And if you look at the slide that compared the old pre-October 2018, we're saving about 12 basis points.
Right.
Which is
0.6 to the 0.48.
Right.
That's right.
which is about more than $200,000 a year in savings. At the same time, we're receiving a lot more services from Greystone than we were receiving before, which is a lot of strategic advice, investment policy, construction, a
Presence
whole
at the meetings,
them
quarterly meetings.
Fees are very competitive.
and all the manager research and the hiring, firing, and the negotiating of all the documents and everything. I think staff could probably speak to the amount of work that they don't have to do now.
I'm sorry? All right, any further questions or comments? I'm not sure what's being...
But I think it
go
was,
ahead.
it might have been on the other slide about, we all are affiliated with VML, and I know that we have 4.2 million as of September 30th. Is that a rate that we give every year, or is that just what we're holding in the trust to build up the VML? It might have been with, yes.
Female VACO.
Right.
Let's make sure that everybody knows that we're transitioning now from the retirement to the post-employment
Yeah,
benefits.
which is also invested, yeah.
Which is a liability, but not part of the retirement system.
Right.
Okay. And so the question is the 2.4 million pay-as-you-go, or does it go into the corpus of the pool?
The 2.4 is pay-as-you-go, and the amount in the pool is static at this point.
We haven't gone beyond the 2.4. If we want to enhance the 2.4, then we need to, the 4.2, we need to tell the city manager to put, let's say, another million in it, or 2 million, whatever we want to do.
And keep in mind, we went in that in 2018.
Right, just started off.
Just joined that in 18.
Right.
but everybody's clear that we're talking about two different
Right.
things.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Not even an apple here, we're talking about apple,
Right. Right.
walnut.
And a similar investment strategy.
Right.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I did have a question. Mr. Birnbaum, and this is just a hypothetical, if you had a decision to make and a recommendation as we go forward, which I know you will, what would you recommend in terms of to the board, in terms of our strategy? Are we on track? Do we need to stay the course? What is your short-term and long-term recommendation?
So we did a lot with the retirement board in the last 12 to 18 months to restructure the program. We feel very good about where our portfolio is and where our exposures are and what the capital markets are likely to provide over the near term. So we continue to monitor developments. Where we see risks becoming heightened, we will become a bit more conservative. But we don't really see those on the horizon. We don't see a recession coming. We don't, although there's a lot of noise about trade negotiations, it's not really having a material impact on the global economy. So we feel good about where our exposures are and where the global economy is.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and other officials, that ends our presentation. We appreciate your attention, and we are adjourned unless
Wow.
otherwise.
Let me say this, again, sincerely, on behalf of council, we appreciate and thank you for what you do. And I personally think that you're doing an outstanding job. You're doing a very good job as a board that does this for our retirees and the citizens of Portsmouth. Any other member of council want to say anything?
We echo.
Oh, I did want to just echo what the mayor has just said. Having the opportunity to sit at the table with you all as a working group, I can say that you all are absolutely engaged in the process. You asked some very challenging and important questions, and you worked very well together. I would only ask that you continue to keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this part of the meeting is over, and we'll take a 5-minute recess between our,
Name is good.
we're back in order. And Dr. Patton.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council, we have Mrs. Amy Carrier, President of Bon Secours, Virginia, that will bring to us a very exciting update on Bon Secours Maryview Medical Center. Mrs. Carrier.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Amy Carrier. I'm the president of Bon Secours Hampton Roads. Thank you for having me this evening. It's a pleasure to see many of the faces that I've grown to know over the last year being president and living here in this community now for a year and a half. My goal this evening is to provide you all with an overview of our ministry, our market, and Maryview Medical Center, highlighting where we've been, how far we've come, and where we're heading in the future. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have or take any comments or guidance at the end. And just to go ahead and get started, many of you know that Bon Secours has merged. It's been a year now. In September of 2018, we merged with Mercy Health to become Bon Secours Mercy Health. And at the corporate level, while we're called Bon Secours Mercy Health, you will still know us locally as Bon Secours. So what this means for the Portsmouth area is that the Bon Secours hospitals and providers are now part of one of the largest health systems in the country. This gives us substantial negotiating power in ways that will help us to increase the quality of our care, to more effectively manage the cost of that care, and it gives us the strength to continue our ministry for those who are poor, dying, and underserved. So while mergers can bring about change within organizations, I can assure you that the care that we provide at the bedside, the care that this community has come to know and appreciate from Bon Secours will not change. As a matter of fact, that is one of the main reasons that our merger transpired so quickly and efficiently, was because our two organizations were so well aligned in terms of our values and our emphasis on human dignity and compassion in care delivery. The health ministry's roots go back nearly 200 years to these three groups of brave religious women, the Sisters of Bon Secours, the Sisters of Mercy, and the Sisters of the Humility of Mary. These ladies came to this country from Europe to serve the poor who had little to no access to care or nursing. Their commitment to service continues today in all of the Bon Secours Mercy Health markets as we seek to improve healthcare access and outcomes for entire communities. These are the four pillars that are really the foundation of all of the work that we do within our ministry. And I'm going to share with you a little bit more about the foundation using these four pillars as they relate to our programs, investments, and innovation across our ministry. I'll explain in detail how these pillars are being reflected in the work that Bon Secours is doing and has been doing, in fact, for decades here in Portsmouth. If you look, you'll see the four: delivering clinical and operational excellence, innovation and growth, strengthening our culture and capabilities, which is particularly important as we're a newly merged organization, as well as improving the community health and well-being. Bon Secours Mercy Health is among the nation's 20 largest health systems and one of the 5 largest Catholic health systems in the country. It is financially strong, well-positioned for growth, and highly respected, spanning now 7 states across the United States, and particularly in the eastern half of the United States. Earlier this year, when we merged with Bon Secours Health System in Ireland, we also became an international healthcare provider. Along with the support of a very large health system, we also have a dedicated local leadership team. This is something maybe that is a little bit new for Bon Secours Hampton Roads. Previously, we had been managed as one Bon Secours Virginia leadership team. After the merger of our two organizations, our ministry leaders asked that we have dedicated teams of leaders in each of our markets that really live in those communities that they serve and understand and are side by side with the patients they care for every day. So you see here my team, Tom Prevette, who you know very well, is our advocate, and Kate Bryn, who's our Vice President of Strategic.
Would they stand, please?
Yeah, please stand. Kate Bryn is our Vice President of Strategic Operations. Michael Bratton is our Chief Nurse Executive and Chief Quality Officer for the market. And Dr. Nguyen is our Chief Clinical Officer for the market. We're all living here locally, driving to work and subjecting ourselves to bridges and tunnels every day. But I did want you to have a moment just to meet a really, truly outstanding team. I want to assure you that our values are really at the core of everything that we do, and that each of our employees, like our leadership team here, our physicians, our caregivers, are really focused on every patient who walks through our doors, and will continue to treat those patients with dignity, compassion, and the highest level of respect. Now, very quickly, because I know you all are very busy folks. There's a lot to digest in this slide, but it is a nice overview that shares right here in this community our wide network of hospitals, primary care services, ambulatory care sites, as well as continuing post-acute care and physician practices that provide healthcare services here to the residents of Hampton Roads. On the far side over here to the left, you can see the pictures of many of our facilities, including the planned hospital at Harborview, which we received just a year ago, the Certificate of Public Need to construct that on our Suffolk campus, which is an extension of Maryview Hospital. We're very proud that we also employ over 5,000 caregivers in this market. And we're excited about some of the expansion that you might have heard about in terms of bringing on a CHS facility into our local system, and that is Southampton Memorial Hospital in Franklin. We just announced that within the last few weeks, and we're really working for that transaction to be closed by the beginning of the year so that they can join us in the unique provision of the many services that they have through their facility. So as we look at the map and we think about Maryview Medical Center, you'll see in yellow, these are the zip codes and the areas that we consider our primary service area based on all the folks who are accessing services at Maryview. The blue areas demonstrate the population that we consider our secondary service area. One of the exciting things for us as we think about the primary and the secondary service area, and you can see in the chart on the top left, are that both of these service areas are going to experience an over 3.5%, collectively over 3.5% growth in the next 5 years. We believe that Western Tidewater is a great place to live, to work, to play, and we're really proud to offer increased access to health care for the current and new residents now and in the coming years. The notion of increasing access to health care in the community is essential today. Access is really about offering convenience, offering health care where folks can experience it within their own communities, and it's paramount for today's population and in today's changing healthcare landscape that we look through the lens of access with everything that we do. We know that people want to access healthcare within a 10-minute commute of their home when a higher level of care is required due to injury or serious illness. There are thousands of people in our community within 10 minutes of Portsmouth. So if we think about that, all of this community really needs quality care at a reasonable cost, and we believe that our distinct brand of being the area's only faith-based, not-for-profit, values-centered organization makes the care that we deliver just a step above that of many others. Bon Secours, as we continue to grow, couldn't be more excited to bring not-for-profit, faith-based care into the Southampton and Franklin community, and we'll be excited at the beginning of the year to share more information as we get to know them better and get to know their primary service areas. When we look at those communities and the relationships that they have, many providers come from Suffolk and Portsmouth to serve the patients in that community, and we're looking forward to really building with them an interdisciplinary system of care that supports them as well as the growth here in Portsmouth at Maryview. A little bit about the history of Maryview. I enjoyed looking and learning a little bit myself. Maryview was first opened in March of 1945, and it was later that year that the Catholic Diocese of Richmond asked the Canadian Order of Nuns, the Daughters of Wisdom, to operate the facility for the diocese, and they renamed it Maryview. So it's pretty much since it opened, within the first year, been named Maryview, although it was not really until the mid-'80s, 1984, March of 1984, in fact, when Bon Secours was asked to take over as the owner and the sponsor for Maryview Medical Center. And so since the 80s, we've been operating Maryview. And I think it brings a lot of pride when we think about the history at Maryview. There were a lot of firsts in this facility within the community. The first cobalt treatment for cancer, the first cardiac cath lab was here at Maryview, the first MRI, the first linear accelerator for radiation therapy in the treatment of cancer, and the first open heart surgery program, as well as first comprehensive pain management program here in this community.
Amy, when you say first,
In this community.
In this community.
In Western Hampton Roads community. Yes. And of course, we still operate the only civilian hospital here in Portsmouth. Now, beyond the walls of our hospital, we have other access points and quality healthcare offerings for the Portsmouth community, including award-winning cardiac, physical therapy, stroke, orthopedic, and behavioral health care. If you look at some of the service offerings here, for example, the emergency department at Maryview is very busy. Can anyone guess how many patients a day we see in the emergency department on average?
1,200.
12 a day? Oh my God.
I was joking. No, probably a couple hundred.
25.
We have about 110 patients on average a day, and of course we all know in the emergency department, yes, the emergency department alone, that's not including our ambulatory clinics and the 26 to 30 admissions a day that we have. So it's a very busy
What
center.
percentage of those people in the emergency room should be in the emergency room?
Well, that's an interesting question. We are seeing a lot less low-level brief visits in the emergency department since Medicaid expansion, which has really done wonderful things for our community and for our facility in helping us to really connect those who are eligible with coverage. And so we know the trust isn't there initially. They experience care in the emergency department because they know they have no other place to go. And then as we help them to register and enroll for Medicaid, we also connect them to a medical home. So whether it's here at the community health center through the federally qualified health center, or it's our own primary care or EVMS, we've had just a tremendous number of patients who now are insured and who are using a primary care medical home instead of the emergency department. So it's a great question, a very timely one with what we've experienced in terms of enrollment and access to coverage in the last year.
Mayor.
Yes.
Ms. Carey, so you're saying, let's just say a citizen of Portsmouth comes to the emergency. They don't have the Medicaid. You all can enroll
Yes.
them there and get them set up in the system.
Yes, we can help them to get enrolled while they're there with us if they're eligible and connect them to resources. And if they're not eligible or if they're underserved, we also connect them through specific programs in the ED with social services who connect them to other resources that they may need as well.
Very good.
So I wanted to share with you some of those metrics that are related to clinical and operational excellence. One of our pillars, delivering clinical and operational excellence, really connects to our key performance indicators like patient experience. Here, if you look at the experience of care, one of the things I wanted to share with you is that our team is really working to improve our performance. If you look at, for example, on down here, I'm trying to, down here in this column, this is the fourth quarter of 2019 year to date. Now, these arrows are showing the trend, and the green meaning that it's a good trend and that the number's going up, which is the direction it should go up. So if you look at 2018 year-to-date data compared to 2019 year-to-date, and then even just in this last quarter of 2019, you will see that we are making progress across all of these domains. This one has a little bit of variability, so we didn't want to fudge. We put a yellow sign there. But in each of these domains of patient experience, we see improvement across the board. Communication with nurses has been a real focus for us in this last year. We truly believe that the nursing relationship is at the heart of patient care. And so when you look at communication with nurses, you'll see that in the fourth quarter here, we are actually at 89.1%, which puts us in the top decile of the CMS database for patient care for that domain. That is what we're striving to do. At a minimum, our target is to be better than the 50th percentile, which you can see across the board in almost all of these domains we are. But our goal is to be top decile in the country. So, yes.
Excuse me. These are qualitative data sources that you're using?
They are. Every hospital in the country is required to use the same, it's called HCAHPS, and HCAHPS stands for the Hospital Consumer Assessment of Healthcare Providers and Systems, and that's what enables us to benchmark ourselves in terms of the top box or the best responses against every other hospital in the country. And so what you see here is the 50th percentile, meaning 50th percentile of all the hospitals in the country, and then the top decile is obviously the top decile of that same database. So every question is a standardized question, and we don't even send the surveys out ourselves. They go out through approved vendors. And then some are returned by email and some are returned by paper.
Dr. Matt?
Ms. Carey, has the leadership ever thought of publishing through some kind of ad in the paper or something to let the public know
about the improvement?
Yeah.
Yes, we have. Our focus this year was really on transformational improvement. We've used the lean A3 thinking process and lean tools to really drive our change. Part of that is ensuring that that change is sustainable. So when we look, as I said, when we look from 2018 across 19, we really wanted to see that we've made the changes that are sustainable, so that when we put a brand promise out there to the community and we say, this is what you can expect when you come here, that's the experience that they have when they come through our doors. Just anecdotally, I mean, I have a lot of meetings with members of the community. I mean, I see people in the grocery store, wherever, and I've had a lot of people say to me, we've gone to Maryview, and Maryview just really feels and looks different than ever before. Part of that look and feel, too, is we've made over $60 million of investment in Maryview at that facility alone since 2016, and we're continuing to make investments.
Please.
I'm sorry. We've
Of the investment.
We've invested over $60 million.
60.
Yes, sir. And
Public to hear that.
it's really important that we maintain a modern facility. We've invested in the infrastructure, so things that sometimes are transparent, like air handlers and those kinds of things, but to ensure that that facility is modern and will really take us into, the next, 50 years of service here in this community. We've got some very strategic investments that we're making at Maryview. We are undergoing new lobby renovations, so it'll be exciting for those of you who have been there with your friends and family before. In the new year, you'll be able to experience a new lobby and a new feel as you come into the facility. So we're continuing to invest not only in the infrastructure, but in new programs. And I'll share with you a little bit later on some exciting investments we're making in our cardiac surgery program. We have just over $3.6 million that was approved to invest in cardiac surgery and the creation of a new hybrid room to enable us to do minimally invasive surgeries, which is really exciting. So we're very pleased with our patient experience performance. One of the other ways that we look at our performance is through independent measures like the Leapfrog survey. And the Leapfrog survey was founded in 2000 by large employers and other purchasers of healthcare. It's a national nonprofit organization that drives a movement for giant leaps forward in quality and safety. Unlike, for example, the CMS, star ratings, which are very, very dated. These are updated every 6 months, and the rating is based on the national comparison of over 2,600 hospitals, and the grades are based on these 28 measures of performance. So these are the quality measures that fall in the Leapfrog survey. So this is our current performance here at 3.09, and that puts us solidly as a B. We do not aim to be a B for long. We're working toward becoming an A. And again, we've done that through lean, A3 thinking, performance improvement methods, through our team and our leaders, with our physicians and our nurses. If you look at the history, and I apologize, somehow these are flipped a little bit here. It actually goes spring 2016 to fall. So B, D, B, B, A, B, B. So we're working toward an A rating, and so wanted you to know that being a B, is it the best? No, it's not the best, but we will get an A rating, and we're moving in that direction as we look at each of those 28 quality performance measures.
Of the 28, can you go back to the,
Yeah, of course.
which is the most challenging to move?
It's difficult to say. I think every facility is challenged by their own processes. Nationally, I think the hardest thing for hospitals that I've seen in the systems where I've worked has been moving mortality and looking at sepsis processes of care. Infections are very, very difficult. And we've all but eliminated C. diff infections in our facilities. Our hospitals in this market are doing remarkably well compared nationally on hospital-acquired infections. So we've done a lot of work around C. diff in particular. Michael, Anti, do you have any thoughts on what's maybe the most challenging?
So the bottom right-hand corner, where it talks about the structural processes and so forth, that ties back to the slide just prior to this that Amy was speaking about, which is the patient experience. And so, patient experience is sometimes grounded in history and, the care that their grandma got, 3 years ago. And so I think that makes it that much more challenging to change and to influence those perceptions in a positive direction.
I mentioned, sepsis earlier, and some of the care for our patients, sepsis patients. We've done some outstanding work that's really cutting edge work in predictive analytics. So using our information systems to help us to predict what would be triggers of patients who become septic, and before that happens, being able to intervene. And so Maryview has been very well recognized for that. Blood conservation is another area clinically, just speaking in general about quality, that Maryview was recognized for. Do you want to say anything about the blood conservation, Anti?
Sure. In the past, when a patient comes to the hospital, whenever you get sick, a lot of times, even in my training in the 90s, it's not infrequent to come in and say, all right, just give the patient 2 units, check the hemoglobin a few hours later, and they should be fine. But we know transfusion is actually a transplant, is a liquid transplant. There's a lot of associated complications with that. You get infection from transfusion. Sometimes you get stress on your heart. You can put a lot of fluids into your body. So now we challenge our physician in the last several years in terms of what's the current data, and we actually try to find out which patient actually requires the transfusion. our patients are very complex. So by using our data, using the technology that we have, we're able to identify which patient will qualify for the transfusion. So now before you actually transfuse, you force our providers to think critically, what am I trying to fix? What am I trying to fix here? Because remember, it's not a free lunch. We're going to do the best for our patient, but a lot of time in the past, we think we're doing the right thing, we actually cause more problems for our patients. So we got to look much smarter. So over the last year and a half, we cut our transfusion rates really fast. We're actually the fastest in this company that we partner with, and they can't believe how quickly we moved. We're actually the best one in the system right now for the Boston Core Mercy, and we actually move extremely fast compared to other facilities nationwide. So great thing we've done for our patients.
Amy, on the scoring,
Thank you, sir.
Are these categories weighted, or all of them the same value when you come up with?
There is a specific methodology that the survey uses in order to place weight on the
And the reason why I say that, although process and structural measures are important, if I'm in the hospital, infections and high-risk surgery, those things are much more important than getting discharged on time, or maybe the nurse telling me a joke when I'm in bed or something. But I was wondering if the categories are weighted to contribute to that overall average.
Historically, there was a lot more focus on just those quality measures, and it's been in, I would say, probably just the last decade that we began introducing patient experience as part of the value proposition. So not only do we want you to go home infection-free and better than you were when you came to us, but we recognize that it's important that we cared for you, that we provided compassionate care, that you understood your medications before they were given to you, that you had appropriate discharge instructions upon discharge. So the questions that are asked in the patient through patient experience in the HCAP survey are really important because they connect back to critical processes that need to happen within the hospital. So although it's a measure of satisfaction, it's really satisfaction in terms of did we do a good job in following these processes that helped you when you leave us to stay healthy, go back to your community, and not have to come back in as a readmission or because you've had a challenge with your medication or some other relapse. So I think it's appropriate that we're putting more weight on those questions because they really do measure important care processes.
Lisa's got a question.
Yes, Amy. I love how you're educating us. We love getting this good information. But in the leapfrog measures, knowing that the delivery, the maternity care was removed, I don't know how those factors weighed into these factors. And then also with the outpatient, the emergency room. I guess I always thought or was told to believe that was separate from the hospital. So how do those figures weigh into these factors as well?
So we have a separate HCAP survey that's just for the emergency room, but the emergency room is very much an integrated part of the delivery system of care for the hospital. We get quite a few of our admissions come through the emergency department. In fact, the majority of our admissions do. We do have an emergency department that's a freestanding emergency department in Harborview, and that is another hospital department of Maryview based in Harborview. But all of them are connected back. In fact, we get surveys from patients down to the level of the unit that they were discharged from. So it could be a cardiac telemetry unit. We can narrow down in and really look at each of those domains of patient care and understand how we performed unit by unit. You ask a great question about obstetrics and labor and delivery. It was our concern for quality primarily that led us to pause the program at Maryview. Over the last several years, we had a decline in volume, and our volume at the time that we paused that program was 1 baby a day. It is very difficult to maintain nursing competency, to maintain high-quality care with very, very low volumes. And so we partnered to make sure that those women have access to deliver their babies elsewhere as we re-examine the things that we've done, the investments we've made, the over $1 million investment in the facility, as well as partnering with other agencies to try to help us to rebuild that program.
Before you leave, to follow up on her question about the emergency operation, and it may be fueled by the perception that decades ago, many hospitals would contract the professional medical staff with a company that would do just that, provide emergency room docs. Is that the case now?
We do. Almost every one of our facilities contracts for the professional staff. We feel that it's important for us to have providers who are dedicated emergency department professionals. You will hear in urgent care, a lot of times, there'll be primary care physicians who start in urgent care and then move into primary care. That's how they build their practices. But in the emergency department, it's a very different population. We work with EMA, who is our contracted provider, and they provide exceptional service. They're very well respected, sir.
Shannon's got a question.
Yes, ma'am. How you doing, Ms. Carey? A couple of things. So I've been involved with healthcare for a long time, and what I see as trends in healthcare, particularly with the ACA and things that have occurred, hospitals such as yourselves, in particularly urban areas, are kind of divesting in the community. And when I say divesting, access to care. And a good example, in Portsmouth, we have a very high degree of cervical cancer. I'm sure you're aware of in the city of Portsmouth. And my concern is our citizens, particularly our marginal citizens who may not have transportation and access to care, how are we providing and ensuring that they are going to have access to care? One of the examples is in some of our communities, their primary care is not really in that 10-minute walking distance or whatever, perhaps. So that's one of my concerns. Another concern, and you can help me understand if this is true or not, the free clinic you all have, the Maryview Free Clinic. And I really love that clinic because when I was president of my Rotary Club, we donated the machines there for the vital signs. Is that facility closing?
So let me answer your questions because it's a perfect segue to my next area, which is improving community health and well-being. The first part of your question about those who maybe don't have access, transportation or otherwise, to get to a primary care provider, you will see here that Bon Secours is helping to build healthier communities. We're bringing health care to those communities, whether it's by census tract or zip code or through a faith community. We're bringing them through our caravan. And I can give you just a few statistics if you'll bear with me a moment. And just to let you know, the Caravan is a free mobile medical service that provides general medical care to adults and children in Hampton Roads that do not have access to healthcare services. It has several stops in Portsmouth, as I mentioned, by zip code, census tract, where we have the most underserved in our community, including a faith-based site like the Mount Calvary Baptist Church. The clinic provides routine evaluations of treatment, common acute illness, as well as sports physicals, children's health insurance enrollment, and health education services. From January through September of this year, the Caravan saw 556 patients with a community benefit total of $231,600. That's year-to-date through September. We're also investigating more intentional partnerships with one of the Portsmouth churches to expand our Passport to Health program and to add another Caravan site to those that already exist. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is because we have this beautiful asset, this resource that is here to deploy. And as more of our community becomes insured, less of our community is accessing care through our caravan or through the Maryview Foundation. So we need to find new ways to really hone in and target those who still need that access, and there are many. So thank you for sharing that. We also, one of the things that we do is we provide free immunizations to the community through the caravan as well as through our drive-through flu shot clinics. And Maryview and Harborview campuses provided immunization to just under 800 people on October 19th of this year. I'd like to also just talk with you a little bit about the Maryview, Bon Secours Maryview, Foundation clinic that you mentioned. The Foundation Healthcare Center is a free clinic that is funded through the foundation to provide a medical home to uninsured patients. So as patients become insured, we do not bill for any of our services. So we transition those who can become insured into a medical home. We had, I shared with the panel recently, we had over 900 patients that were being followed through primary care as the medical home. We are now down to less than 150 patients that are being followed. We were very eager to continue to provide those services, so we basically advertised through social media and other means to broaden the net to all of Virginia. We said anyone in the state of Virginia can come and receive free care, not just the city of Portsmouth and not just the Tri-City area. We really did not see an increase, and I suspect it may be due to the Medicaid expansion, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Now, the great news is as more become insured and they have access to primary care and they really have a true medical home, that means that those dollars that your Rotary or other community groups, our foundation has raised toward that care can be put into other downstream needs for the community, like ancillary laboratory services, diagnostic imaging, helping those who need surgeries. So instead of at the primary care level, now we can move it forward to get those much needed services. So thank you for the great segue. The Maryview Foundation Healthcare Center year to date had over 6,000 patient encounters, and the community benefit was $638,300 through September of this year. We continue to see the top 3 conditions that really plague all of our communities: diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. So I'll go ahead and move on here, just in the interest of your time. Wanted to share with you a little bit about innovation and growth. And as we move into the future, Bon Secours will continue to show its commitment to the city of Portsmouth and the greater Portsmouth area. We'll be innovating and growing. We will be delivering clinical and operational excellence and really furthering community health and well-being. We'll do this in several ways. One, we mentioned expanding into and acquiring the CHS Hospital in Franklin that will become a part of our family of facilities in our integrated health system. A second focus in our growth efforts will be in the Harborview area as we move forward with the Certificate of Public Need to build the facility in that community. That hospital will include 4 general purpose operating rooms as well as 18 beds for inpatient, low complexity surgical care. That will help us with cost of care, access in the communities that are growing, and it is an extension of Maryview. Since obtaining the state approval, we have been in the early stages of planning and have done the necessary preparatory site work in accordance with the COPM process. We've done pre-construction work. So far, that's included architecture, design, master site planning, clearing and grading the land, identifying estimates for equipment and labor, and so far the project is on track for a tentative opening date in 2021. So stay tuned for a groundbreaking ceremony at some point in the near future. We will continue also to grow and expand the scope of programs through Maryview. Maryview will really be our hub for tertiary care. We plan to invest in Maryview as that hub, particularly in areas like cardiovascular, rehabilitation, and also in the much-needed area of behavioral medicine. The only approved open heart program in Western Hampton Roads is at Maryview Medical Center, and we are expanding our cardiovascular capabilities at the hospital. I mentioned earlier the hybrid operating room, a $3.6 million investment to create a state-of-the-art hybrid operating room in which we can perform minimally invasive cardiac surgery for patients who need it in this area. This hybrid capability allows us to have the latest surgical techniques, decreased recovery time, and decreased procedure time. Did you have a question? So as a ministry, we are developing a comprehensive digital customer engagement and activation strategy to engage our patients and to share with them, just as you said, how are you putting that message out there, to share with them the great news about our quality, our experience, and our investment here in Portsmouth. We will continue to seek opportunities to diversify the way that we bring care to our community. So whether it's finding new communities, faith communities, zip codes, whatever it may be, to locate those who need care, those who are underserved, that is our mission, or to invest in downstream care for those who now have access through Medicaid expansion. And so we'll continue to engage, collaborate with payers and other stakeholders in addressing the social determinants of health. And so I just, in closing, want to say, this is a really exciting time for us. It's an exciting time to be in healthcare. You can be proud that Bon Secours is prospering and doing well in this community and intends to grow and innovate here. In order to be successful, we know that we need to leave behind some of the old ways of thinking and push ourselves to be creative, to work with new partners, and to think differently. Our path forward is very clear. We believe that everyone in Portsmouth should have the opportunity to receive affordable, high-quality health care, and we look forward to working with you, our City Council, to ensure that this is a reality for our community. I really just want to say thank you again. I know it's a very late evening for you, and I appreciate the time that you've given me to share the great news about our team here at Bon Secours.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Can we go back to slide 7, please?
Oop, there we go. Sorry.
Right.
Yes.
Question, when Harborview Hospital comes online, like you're saying, within a couple of years, how will that affect, because I'm looking here at the primary and secondary service areas, because the Harborview Hospital will be in 23435, and that's one of the primaries for Maryview now. And then I'm just wondering how that's going to change primary and secondary, because a lot of the secondary you would think would become primary at Harborview because they wouldn't go past it to come to Maryview. And I just, how is that going to, first question, how is that going to affect the primary and secondary coverage as far as, patients at Maryview as opposed to the Harborview Hospital?
That's a great question. Right now, Harborview is an extension of Maryview, and we intend for it to continue to be an extension of Maryview. What will likely happen, though, is as we see that 3.5% growth or the 3.94% in the secondary area, you'll probably begin to see more population density, and typically people tend to keep moving out. So we may see a bigger catchment area when we build that hospital. It really depends on what services folks are seeking. So if they're looking for a lower complexity surgery, something that is an extension of the services on that campus, like, for example, we have an ambulatory surgery center there, we have a freestanding emergency emergency department today, imaging services, and we have a cancer center that's on that site. The Commission on Cancer says you should never have to leave your own community to get cancer care. So with that cancer center there, as that population grows, not only will we be able to provide the 90% of cancer services that are outpatient that we deliver today, like oncology, infusion, radiation therapy, but we'll also be able to utilize that new facility for lower complexity, shorter length of stay procedures. We'll be growing, for example, cardiovascular services here, so consultative services that will feed into and grow Maryview's cardiovascular programs. That's what I meant by Maryview really kind of being the more higher acuity tertiary hub for us as we look at our presence across the market. So when we look at our primary care, we look at our specialty practices, and we look at growth, we'll grow our ambulatory footprint, but our growth in high acuity services is going to be at Maryview.
And just my second half of the question is, with the new Harborview Hospital coming online, is there any consideration for there to be a trauma center there? Because as it stands now, you know, a lot of the secondary that's coming to Maryview now, the two choices, which if a med flight's not available, you either have to go across the James River Bridge or Monitor Merrimack to Newport News or through the tunnels to Norfolk. And depending on the time of day and traffic, that can be crucial to a patient that's on an ambulance ride. So I didn't know if there was consideration, that way we'd have a trauma center on our side of the water that would be very beneficial to the whole region on this side of the water.
That's a great question. There are varying degrees of trauma services. So for example, all of our emergency departments right now are able to provide care for traumatic injury. So let's say, for example, if I fall down my stairs and I break my hip, that could be a traumatic injury. So I can go into any one of my emergency departments. I can be stabilized. If it needs follow-up surgery, then I'll be transferred. But the immediate care for the patient can be done in the emergency department at any of our sites. When we talk about multi-system trauma, like we're talking like major vehicle accidents,
Right.
those kinds of things, you know, it really depends on what the trauma volume looks like. So there's quite a lengthy process to really work together with the state to identify where those accidents are happening, because it's not really based on where patients live. It's based on the routes that they're traveling when it comes to traffic-related injury. So we'd want to understand if there's enough volume to support that. And then there are many levels. Level 1 trauma center being the highest, 2, 3, and so at each of those levels you provide a certain level of service. But again, something we would need to evaluate once we have that facility built into that community and we look together with the state on where injuries are happening and what the state's needs are. If the needs are to grow a trauma network, then we're here to support the community needs. It's just not something I could commit to without data.
Right, and I understand, and I understand, because a lot of times it's based on the reports from paramedics to the ER based on mechanism of injury, and typically if it's a severe MVA or a GSW, you're going to get diverted to Norfolk. That's just the way it is. You're not going to stop, and that's more what I'm referring to is you know, severe traumas that the EMS providers are responding to and transporting on the ambulance is just the way it is now. Either have to go to Newport News and Norfolk, and basically for our jurisdiction it's going to be Norfolk. But you know, incident in the tunnel's blocked. It kind of leaves us in a bad situation, and that's why I was just curious going out into the future. You know, it'd be very beneficial to everybody on this side of the water if we had one.
Yeah, I think too, many trauma patients are transported by helicopter as well, so that's why those sites have a helipad. So they make the call in the field to determine if it's appropriate by ambulance or helicopter based on, you know, the patient's needs. I mean, we're open to serve the community in any way that we're needed, and if we work together and the data would support that, then we would pursue understanding what investments we need to make to do that. Like I said, I really don't have any data. It's not something that we sat down with the state and talked about at this point. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Why are you guys not providing less invasive proton therapy?
Why are we not providing less invasive proton therapy? I'm not an expert in proton therapy, and I'm sure that clinically there is a place and that it's indicated in a certain population. It's typically an academic medicine investment, and of course, there's a proton therapy center here in Hampton Roads. The majority of our patients have all of the cancer care services that they need in the communities that we serve through our cancer centers. So we do provide comprehensive radiation therapy, SRS, HDR, all of the radiation modalities that will care for the majority of patients. But similar to some conditions like advanced cancer, where we don't invest in research either, because we're not an academic medical center, we would refer those patients to an appropriate site for care.
I don't want to be here till 11 o'clock, but are you all in conversations with the naval medical community regarding care for our residents at both hospitals?
So we do provide care to many of the families of the military who serve and live in this area. We're not in any particular collaborative with the Naval Medical Center, but we do have a number of providers that work together with Dr. Nguyen to get privileges, and they come and they work in our facilities with us side by side. They pick up shifts as we call them PRN, that's as needed. So it gives them an opportunity to work in a civilian environment as well as in the military environment. And in fact, we've partnered for our cardiac surgery program. For the longest time, had only one surgeon who really only did one type of cardiac surgery, did it exceptionally well. But when you're limited to one and doing that one thing, anytime that he would take vacation, we would need support. So we partnered with many of the military cardiac surgeons, and they would come in and they would rotate while he was on vacation and help cover. They're welcome. They're a welcome part of our medical staff. And of course, the community, we're there to serve all of the community, including the military and their family members.
I have two questions. What happened to Crittenton up there?
What happened to what?
Crittenton, Sandy Bottom.
They forgot to blue it.
Yeah.
The blue lighter didn't hit.
Oh, the little part at the end.
They're also missing 23707 and 23703.
I apologize for my map reading skill.
Yeah.
It's all right.
The blue did.
You know, it's based on actual experience of care, meaning actual patients who are accessing care. So,
Yeah. The other, can you go to your slide with the 28 KPIs?
sure, the leapfrog
Yeah, right
slide.
there.
Mhm.
You used a nuanced word which may have gone past some people. You said paused for the maternity care.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
I can't share details of where we are today, but I can tell you that I use the word paused because we couldn't operate a service with such low volume.
Right.
But we recognize that there's a need here. Just in talking with the FQHC alone, they have a population equal to the population that we were delivering in our facility. So instead of one patient a day where we had to partner with them, that would be 2 patients a day. Still very low volume. But what happened in 2017, I believe it was right around Labor Day, the largest obstetrical group that delivered at Maryview left our facility. They didn't leave their practice, but they left Maryview, and they deliver all of their patients in Chesapeake at Chesapeake Regional. And so their practice is between the two, and they chose to take them there. That's well before my time. Whatever may have happened is history. Since that time, we had made an over $1 million investment in that unit, which I can tell you is probably the most beautiful mother-baby unit of any in Hampton Roads, and probably the nicest that we have. And I am working to invite other groups, including that group, to come back to take a look to learn who we are as a new leadership team and perhaps consider reopening that service. That would be my greatest goal. But to do it, we need to have the volume to operate it safely. Yes, sir.
So it sounds like that was a network issue, somewhat a network issue? No worries, you don't have to go there.
I would not say it was not an insurance or a, let's say, clinically integrated network issue. I think it was years of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
And we have a new team, we have a new environment, and we'd like to have a new day for labor and delivery. So we are very eager to work with other groups to find those who may have an interest in experiencing Maryview again.
And the reason
new.
why, you did a very good job in explaining that to me. The reason why I brought it up, because I think there's a distinction between the word pause and eliminate. And you explained it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Pat.
One of the things I heard, Ms. Carrier, is about the care through the behavioral health care services. Many hospitals across the nation are trying to get out of any kind of psychiatric whatever, reducing beds that you only have 6 beds at the whole hospital or 3 beds. And what I'm hearing through you and our behavioral health care director, that Maryview continues to be a hospital that is trying to embrace and provide the kinds of services that our citizenry needs, that deals with the behavioral health care kinds of illnesses. And that was good to hear you say that, because where, mental hospitals are closing, no one wants to deal with that area. You all are very much embracing it and helping a significant number of our citizens.
I think behavioral health is really at the heart of our mission. And if you look across the country, we don't have nearly enough behavioral health services to meet the need. And look, even the state hospitals are full. It's a challenge to recruit and to keep talented providers, because the pool of resources in terms of, nurses and providers who are skilled in behavioral health is in very short supply. So, we have tried. We just recruited a new adolescent psychiatrist to join Maryview. We're very excited about her. It's January, I believe. We were just talking about her starting. I think she's really well aligned with our mission. I think she'll be a great addition to the team. We've tried to partner strategically also in the community with psychiatrists who are private practice. So we're not just employed, we're not just private practice. We really want to partner and have affiliated physicians, whether they're employed or private practice, and have us be the preferred place to practice. Our census since doing that, I believe it was in the low 20s or upper teens. A year ago, I'm trying to think, it was in August when we were doing the budget, and our census has come up to around an average of 28, so from 20 to 28 patients a day. There's some variability in that. Our biggest challenge is being able to recruit enough staff, because we have the beds to open and we know there's community need. So our goal is certainly to expand that, not to contract that service.
Great.
Any further questions? Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you for giving
Thank you.
good quality health care.
Thank you. I would love to come back again. Thank you very much.
We'll schedule it. Thank you again. Before we go to the next item, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Primarily the city clerk.
Well,
And Dr. Pat.
the manager has an opening. I had an opening. I will read my opening.
Oh, okay.
Members of City Council, this evening you have an opportunity to discuss the 2020 meeting schedule for City Council. I will yield to the city clerk.
Yes, ma'am. Members of City Council, you received a correspondence from the city attorney that outlined your requirements for meeting. And basically, that's the second and fourth Tuesday of each month and the work session prior to that session. Anything else you do is basically your choice. One of the reasons why we have the calendar coming before you was the question of your community meetings. And what I'm looking for from you is clarification on meetings you want to have, the format you would like to have them in, or the elimination of meetings. We just need to know before we get into the calendar, and then we're having to try to get rid of a meeting or something like that. So basically, we're providing you the proposed draft copy of the calendar for next year, and we're looking for your input. This will be on your next agenda. That way you adopt it before the end of the year. We have time to get it out to the public.
All right, well, let's take it one item at a time. Let's talk about the community meetings.
Okay.
You had suggested 3.
Well, currently you have 3. You have 2 in the evening and 1 that's scheduled on a Saturday morning. My reasoning for asking is because, as we know, the last couple, this particular format, and we've had several different formats, has kind of worked itself out, so to speak. So it's time for either something different or eliminate it or just do some, I need your feedback.
Yeah, I think it would be good to talk about the formats that I know the council's used. They've used a format where everybody sits behind a table. We did that at the Churchland
Middle School.
Middle School. We've used the format where everybody sits in chairs. We've done that at Woodrow Wilson Auditorium. We've used the format of council circulates from table to table, which is the most recent, but we've done that with variations too. But we had the public move.
Right.
And then we said, no, let's keep the public stationary and council move. So there might be another format. Does anybody want to offer one?
I liked Lisa's suggestion.
Okay.
That she sent us an email on the, you can elaborate on that. I thought that was good.
So I had suggested, since we're in so many meetings, we don't get out to the Civic League meetings. So we would just open it up to either 2 or 3 meetings, whatever we come up with, and we would have the civic leagues to come to us, and it's pretty much their agenda meeting. So they would present the things that they're concerned with, some of the issues. They would speak to their issues, and we would come up as a team how we could address it. That way we're getting to see all of the civic leagues that we don't see until we're campaigning or, invited to a meeting, or, just like we had the Waterview thing, and then we all couldn't go because, of the sunshine rules. And so have them in and make it their meeting. And we could have 3 or 4, maybe 5, I don't know how many would present in one night, and we hear their concerns.
Get north side, south side, and Churchland.
That's it, exactly.
That's too easy.
And have them present, the information wouldn't be stale, because by the time we present out, by the time the first person goes, and then the third person goes, we've pretty much repeated all of the same information, so we could make it competitive for them, where they would come to the meeting, get their citizens to show up at the meeting so their concerns are being addressed. And then the one civic league with the most attendance, we could recognize them at a future council meeting and kind of give them a kudos, and, kind of like we did with when the other civic leagues did something great in the community.
I think that's a good idea, but, and I'm going to give a but. This means in order to address council on that night, you need to be a member of the Civic League, and I don't think you need to be pre-qualified.
Right.
There are people who feel that, no, I'm not going to join the Civic League. I mean, we can see that because we have a lot of civic leagues in name only. And so that might work for one community meeting, but I wouldn't recommend that we use it for all. We as a nation have become less attractive to joining things, whether it's a civic organization like Rotary or Lions Club or civic leagues. And this kind of says, the message is, we don't want to hear from you unless you're in the civic league. Yeah.
Well, why can't it just be as simple as north side, south side, Churchland?
Well, I guess the only are we only going to limit it to the citizens in those areas? Or is that, I mean, that's, we've kind of tried to move our part around, but historically, you see the same people at every meeting. It doesn't matter where you have it. So you can't limit the attendees
If it's a city
by the
council
area.
meeting,
We can change our area to try to make it easier for the citizens to attend. But, historically, very few times do you see anybody different at each of the 3 meetings. It's very rare. And I don't know, how to engage more of the citizens to be involved. I mean, because that's what we ultimately are trying to do by having these meetings, because we want to hear from the citizens. We want to hear the issues. And, that was the intent, trying to, open that door for them to give us the information. But like I said, we still only hear from the same individuals all 3 meetings in the year.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I had, and this is just for information, I need somebody to help me understand. When we send out the invitation to the citizens for these meetings, how do we do that? What is our means for getting the notification out to our citizens? And the reason why I say that, I know we generally see some of the same folks, but I know we've talked about it, at our council meetings, using technology, using the means to get the information out. What are we doing to get the information out? Are we putting it in the bills when we send out the folks? I mean, how are we letting our citizens know we're actually having the meeting?
It's done several different ways, and it's all in accordance with the way that we actually handle your agenda meetings or your regular meetings.
Okay.
We put it on our webpage. LaVoris sends out the notice to the people that are on his list. We have our own list of people that want to be notified of any council meeting that's being had. That has over 100 people on it.
Okay.
There's no requirement of where you come from or who you are to get on that list. You just call us, we put you on the list, we get your email address. We put an ad in the paper. At one time, we were mailing out notifications to civic leagues. Big problem with that is the civic league presidents were not sharing the information. And the comments we were getting from people is, the president knew about it, but the president never told us about it.
Sure.
And then we get situations where there's a hot item going on in the community, and it just happens to be when we're having a community meeting, which we've announced in the council meeting, and then they show up. So we are doing exactly what we do for regular council meetings. We're announcing it in the council chamber. We put it in the paper. LaVoris sends it out. We send it out. It's on your calendar that you adopt.
Sure.
The beginning of the year.
We do signage on the street as well.
Yes, sir.
Near the community where the meeting's held.
I think we have a paradox, and that is some of our biggest critics who say, I don't get a chance to talk to councils, I don't show up at these meetings. And that's the purpose, is to let everybody have a chance to come to these meetings. And it's like the old saying about horses and water. I like your salt.
Yeah. Make them thirsty.
So where are we? Is the quantity 3, or is there a higher number or a lower number?
Well, right now on your calendar, I only have 2. I don't have the Saturday morning because I wanted to figure out what you were going to do as far as community meetings are concerned. I have locked in the 2 days of Badawi. If you want it at a different location, we can do that. That's not a big deal. Just understand, if we use a school, we have to pay for it.
I don't, at Bidawee, people live in Churchland, that's a pretty good drive. So I think we need to go back to having that in different areas of the city. Libraries could be a location.
Truthfully, it's big enough.
Yeah.
And if we had standing room only, that'd be a great problem to have.
Yeah.
Well, just remember the comments we had that time we were at Churchland Library. And unfortunately, again, it was a hot button item.
Yeah, I think
and
that was
council got, crushed because they thought it was a last minute put together, and it wasn't. You're planning these a year out.
I don't think some of us were at that meeting, so
No,
what happened?
probably not.
Yeah,
Probably
what
not.
happened?
It wasn't pretty.
Oh.
Well, everybody knows where schools are, and if we're only doing 2, I mean, how much money? I don't think we're talking about a budget buster here. I think that's the logical place to have it. You know, schools are usually in the communities, so if you're having one in Churchland, have it at one of the Churchland schools.
One at Wilson.
Have one at Wilson, and maybe if you're going to have 3, have one in Craddock.
Or Brighton.
Or Brighton, yeah. I mean, that's my suggestion, go back to schools.
What happened at
As a
Norfolk?
location. Yeah, no, we've had them at Norfolk, yeah.
All right. Let me try a different way.
We
Venues.
got anywhere.
Yeah, venues. Are we all okay with doing schools?
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Yes.
All right. Are we all okay with trying to find a geographic dispersion?
Yes.
One in
Yes.
one in the west, one in the south, one in the east.
Right, yes.
Yes.
And we did that before. We had it at Churchland, we had it at Craddock, and I think we did Norcom maybe. So, I mean, we tried to move it around to different schools each
Yeah.
year, so it wasn't always in the same place. So that's not a problem.
And we've done the sit in the cafeteria
Yeah.
versus be in the
Auditorium.
the auditorium.
Right.
We sat on the stage,
Yeah,
we
we
sat
did.
on the floor.
And I think that's the important part. Not so much location is what we're looking for, is the substance of the meeting. What are you looking to happen at that meeting? Is it going to be, were you all sitting up front? Is it you sitting behind a table? Is it you sitting in the audience and whoever wants to can pop up and talk? That's the kind of thing I'm looking for, because that's going to make a difference on where you go.
You know, one of the main things, my feeling is people, if we're inviting people in the community to come share their thoughts or concerns, we're in a listening mode. But a lot of times there are questions,
They won't.
the answer to it, we're not going to have there. So either the feedback's got to be better, or, and I think this is what should happen, we should have people, as many as possible, there, they can answer the obvious questions. Obviously, some of them will take some research at times. You won't be able to give the answer at that time, but I think that's the frustrating thing. Somebody comes and asks a question, and you know, maybe the one of the 7 of us, we don't know the answer. It's a public works answer, it's a public safety answer, but I think we need to try to answer as many questions at that night as possible.
I'm going to recognize myself first, then you. I think we went to the let's use round tables to try to make it appear less formal. But let's pretend that we're citizens sitting at one table and a council member comes. We say the same thing 7 times,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
not very efficient.
Not efficient.
And I think maybe we need to say, well, that was good effort, and maybe go back to a informal approach where we all hear the same thing at the same time.
Yes, yes.
Definitely.
Do we have a consensus on that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
One thing I was going to say is, like, you know, when we did in the past where we did the round tables, no matter whether we moved or they moved, at the end of the night when we did our report outs, the last person that had the report out didn't have anything to say.
Right.
Because everybody heard the same thing, just like the mayor just said. One thing I'd like to consider, go back to that, is maybe have a form, you know, not requiring anybody to fill it out, but a citizen that wants to fill it out, that has a question, that wants to answer back, name and information, email address, and a phone number. And that way they could have it and pass it off to us, you know, because just like Well, I mean, I know before you have, one of the deputy managers, somebody get with them, just like we do in the council meetings. But, if they came there that night, this might be somebody we've never seen before, and they want to answer back. I don't see nothing wrong with them having a piece of paper with their contact information and, hey, here it is.
Kind of like non-agenda speakers.
Yeah, but that way just be pre-filled out.
She was next. Okay, so the point I was, I like that concept, but also I thought maybe what we could do is when we come to the meeting, let's say there's some important topics that we're discussing as a council, education or whatever. Let's come prepared with maybe 3 or 4 topics to update where we are in the process, to provide information to inform the folks that show up, and then we can then open up for that Q&A or whatever type of situation we want. I think when people, I guess I look at it from my vantage point. If I were going to come out in the evening, I may have something I want to share, but I want to know what's going on.
Right.
I want to know, particularly some of the hot button items, the big things that we're doing. What are we doing? How do I fit into that plan? And so with that knowledge, then I may not like everything, but I can at least leave that meeting saying that I learned something new and I was informed.
So
That's just a
have
thought.
2 or 3 topics that are broad, that there's a 10 or 15-minute presentation.
Yeah, something like that, maybe.
Information.
5 minutes, yeah,
We've
just-
done that in the past. I think the thing you need to be careful of, that it doesn't become a council
meeting.
presentation meeting. Some things are obvious,
That's a good point.
An update on the Churchland Bridge, for example.
Yeah.
or the
Which
pavilion.
affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Need 5-minute update.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Can you hold for a second?
Yeah, I just have a simple statement.
Let's take Paul.
You know,
We'll take
the mentality of this day and time is, if I'm going to come to a meeting, I want to ask what I want to ask. So they don't want to be, led or fed. They want to castrate.
Ouch.
No.
They want
Pig
to
farm.
tell you what you're not doing. You have to allow them to just voice, their openness. The only thing they can do is communicate to us. And they want to do it the way they want to do it, yes, respectfully, but that's what they want when they come. Whenever they're meeting with us, they don't want us to talk about the casino. They want to talk about what they want to talk about. Why you didn't cut the tree down 2 blocks over. It's been there and it's a problem. And that's what they want, to talk about what they want to talk about.
All right. Let's go to Dr. Pat and back to
Mine is
me.
very simple. When I came in 2015, my first meeting with the council was at Churchland Middle School, where you all were at the long table with the microphone in the center. At that time, the change came because citizens had expressed somehow that they didn't want to have to get up in front of a microphone to talk to everybody. Some people who wanted to talk weren't comfortable with speaking to the entire public. So in that context and in that discussion with the council, that was the council, it was decided, well, let people sit at a table or where they're comfortable and talk. Because what we had, when we had, you got to come to the microphone, you had the same people. People who weren't comfortable in speaking in public, and there are a lot of people now who just aren't comfortable in speaking in public, but may want to say something to you all.
But you can lessen that, and instead of having somebody stand up and walk up to a stand-up microphone, like the Oprah or Winfrey, have somebody with a microphone go down and they can still stay in their chair
On that microphone.
and say whatever they want to.
They don't like to talk.
Well, it could be a combination, not to jump in there, Mayor, but it could be a combination of basically what you're recommending. The sheets that you're talking about handing out to everyone, they fill the sheets out when they get there, give them a couple of minutes, then we collect the sheets, and then we have a staff person, whoever, to stand in front and say, council members or public, this is an issue that someone has, and let the conversation go from there. That way you're not putting the citizen on the spot, and you're still covering the topic, and everybody's getting their say.
And have the form done two ways. One, you hand it out there, but you can have it online. You can, and they can send it in. It doesn't have to be that night. They can take the time.
Right.
2 weeks out.
Yeah.
They don't have to sign their name. If they're asking for a question or something that they need a response, why isn't my ditch clean? They can put their name in.
The only trouble with that is that how do I know that I sent that in? They didn't ask a question.
I think our rule would be is that
I think we're assuming that our citizens are so shy they can't come to a meeting and ask a question themselves. All of them aren't stage frightened. I like the idea of a paper trail if they want to do that. But just like we do at a council meeting, if somebody's addressing council and it's a question, a staff member meets them at the back of the room and takes down the information, I think we're making it way too complicated.
Well, I think Deborah's suggesting both, that we have both the opportunity to have the questions written out and go to the mic. I think what we're finding is that there's no perfect way.
Right.
Yeah.
How do people want to be
So, but let's see where we are. We're going to use schools. We're going to, do we say 3?
Yeah.
Yeah? 3? 3.
Okay.
We're going to do it at night, not on a Saturday. Does that work better? I mean, Saturdays get complicated with family and athletics and so forth.
Okay. Now, keep in mind your senior citizens and night driving.
They don't drive at night. They ain't coming.
That was the purpose of doing the morning.
I understand. And maybe that one of those meetings could be in the daylight saving times.
Yeah.
Where it's later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can do it earlier than 7 o'clock, maybe do it at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Can I ask a question? Have we ever done a survey of our citizens and asked their preference? I'm just asking as a question.
That would be too simple.
I mean, have we ever done a survey to ask them what kind of format that they would like to see? And take the higher number or the lesser number, give 3 kind of formats, not 5 or 10 formats, but maybe 3 formats. Have we ever done anything like that? I'm just asking a question.
Basically, what has happened is council has moved the community meeting program based on the input of the citizens.
Okay.
So when we started out initially, we started out with the long U-shaped table. It looked kind of like this. Council was up on a stage. The audience was down in the seats. We were always at a high school. And the citizens said, nope, y'all are too far away from us. So then we put you all down on the floor behind a table. They were like, nope, we don't like the table. Churchland High School, that's when we got rid of the table, and then we had you in the chairs. Norcom High School and Wilson High School. And then it got to a point where council didn't really care for that format too much. Okay. And so then we went to let's try the round table. We're out there with the citizens. We can talk to them. They can tell us our concern. The problem with that is pretty much like you said, with all of council reporting, your first and second person reports everything, and there's nothing left for everybody else to report. And you're listening all to the same people.
Yes.
But, and it's not an efficient way for the citizens because the same citizen says it 7 times.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I think we're getting close to coming up with an idea, which is schools, 3, 1 in the summer, so that, and started at 5 o'clock. Give opportunities for questions to be submitted in advance of the meeting and at the meeting. We sit all together, not behind the table, with.
I'm recalling the former mayor at Wilson High School when we were looking at the people sitting in the audience, and we all said, okay, there are 45 people in the audience, and of those 45 people in the audience, 30 of them are on the city payroll because every department head was there, or assistant department head, and the manager's staff and the clerk's staff and us. There were very few citizens, and the mayor stopped the meeting and said, okay, do you all even want us to have this meeting? Because most of the people here, 75%, are on the city payroll.
Well, that's the same thing that happens at Civic League. You go to a Civic League and they're going to be
Why
out.
are we bothering to do this? And I seem to remember Ms. Ashbury said, you shouldn't do it. We know how to find you when we need you.
That may be true.
Well,
So is it a mandate? Is it mandated?
no, it's not mandated, but I think it's a good attempt on our part to engage the public, to give them an opportunity outside of the council meeting to talk to us. It's not like they don't talk to us. She's absolutely correct. I mean, the amount of time that we spend on taking telephone calls, seeing people, getting a call, going to their house to look at their problem. I mean, you all know. The public doesn't know. I think that we operate in some type of glass tower that we can't see out of.
Yeah.
I think when we have them in a different area of the community, one thing that we need to do if we're going to do an update from a staff or a council direction is to survey the community, see what projects are going on that are city projects or city contractor projects, and update the folks that that project that started 6 months ago in community. This is why it's taken so long. This is what it's going to do. For your water, for your sewage, for your street, just to give them a community update.
All right, so it sounds like that's a blending of what Shannon brought up, we discussed. So do we have a consensus? We're going to do 3. It's going to be at schools. 1 is going to be during the summer, start at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Questions in advance. Start meeting off with an update of something of interest at the
10 or 15 minutes tops.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah. And that would allow people time to do their questions and so forth. Have microphones. Yes.
Now, just while it's on top of my head, when we're talking about doing those updates, since we're doing the meetings in various areas of the community, could we have an update that's pertinent to the area that we're at? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. I think we
Somehow that
got
was-
it. Do we have a consensus on that?
Yes.
All right. What else on the calendar?
Meeting schedule.
All right. Bill had proposed an idea at the last council meeting about
Mondays.
doing one Monday a month.
I like that idea.
I think the scarcest time that we have is collectively. I mean, we each have an opportunity to talk individually with the appointees at any time, either by the phone or face-to-face. But corporately, collectively, this is valuable time because we get a chance to do what we're supposed to do, and that's act as a group. And to me, that's scarce time. And although I like the idea of giving up a Monday meeting, I'm afraid that we're giving up scarce time. And maybe we need to look at it a different way and say, can we put more value into our Monday meetings? No disrespect to the agenda, but I look at November 12th. Now remember, we didn't meet on the 11th because it was Veterans Day, and we had a long agenda that could have been bifurcated had we met on Monday. We could have put part of that workload on Monday. And those were important subjects. And it just happened to be probably coincidental, too, that things were backing up and crescendoed at that particular moment. So, having said that, what is your...
I would like to suggest that we keep our Monday meetings January through May because of the budget.
Okay.
And then
That's a very good
June
point.
through December, we go to one a month or on call as needed.
That's,
I think
In other
on
words,
call is
we're-
needed
Okay.
during that period is
all right.
best.
I like that.
That's summer travel schedules,
I
that's
like that idea.
November, December holidays.
No, I think that, yeah, I like that.
All right.
Good idea.
I agree. I
Yeah,
mean,
this
there-
is-
Dr. Patton, what do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
The time, starting January, we don't come back until January 13th, but we'll have our 2 meetings in January 13th, in January. From January, and I said to someone today, we have 5 meetings before I present the budget.
Right.
January, February, March 25th is the,
Budget presentation.
yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There'll be 7 meetings before, which is not a lot of time, but there's a lot of stuff during those months that will be coming forward
Right.
for you all. But you're right, after the budget.
And it's General Assembly time, too, so that's going to add more.
Right.
Right.
After the budget is passed, we're bringing forth public work items, and council had said in the beginning, on the Tuesdays, we're going to be in there at 7 o'clock. You remember we used to be in there at 8:30 or whatever time we got in there, that you do 2 on the Tuesday and put at least 4 or whatever you can on the Monday. That has worked.
Yeah.
So when we look at after May, I think that would work beautifully.
Y'all are really going to beat the stuffings out of me. I didn't realize that the 13th is the first meeting we have in January.
That's the first meeting.
I would propose that we have a work session on the 6th, make it 3 Mondays.
No, Mayor.
Well, let me tell you why, and let that be
us to be ready,
budget.
no.
See, I told you, you guys would jump on me.
I didn't say nothing. Yeah.
Let it be totally budget.
No, Mayor, I'm going to do budget on those meetings.
No, you're missing my point. I haven't made my point yet. We get an opportunity to say, you know what? These are some of the things that we want you to take a look at and consider in your budget. We needed that opportunity to say, if money was free and grew on trees, we collectively...
Oh, us talking, not her talking.
That's exactly right. This
You all
becomes
would have that on the 6th. We would just sit here, because
It'd be like a community meeting for you all to listen.
Well,
No.
I think it's important.
We're planning our budgets and working now tediously to get ready for the budget. In what we're planning will be the time for you all
Dr.
to
Patton,
say.
you're missing my point. My point is that you need some guidance from us of things that we would like to see in the budget.
Yes.
And that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that, if we had a wish list, this is everything we want for Christmas. You get that list.
I like that idea, but with a different twist. I think we need to use one of those Mondays. We'll be in the council chamber, and let's let citizens come and let us know what they would like as well to see in the budget.
Oh, Jesus.
How about that?
That takes it to a different level. I mean, that.
It's a regular meeting.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
And
the citizens can't say at the end, well, we had no input.
And we can have input as well.
Yeah.
But open it up, it's like a.
What do y'all think
like
about
a
that?
budget community meeting.
I'm easy.
Okay.
I'm good with it.
Are you good on it?
I am.
Nate?
Yeah, I think we'll be fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you
All
want
right,
to.
well, let's schedule Monday the 6th for that meeting. Where we ask the public to give us their wish list of things that they would like to see in the budget.
So would that be a community budget meeting?
A community budget meeting.
So,
But this will take place in the council.
yeah, I know.
And we'll start that at, what time, 6:30?
Let's find our.
Start
seven.
6 o'clock. 6
Six?
o'clock is the
Start at
regular,
6, that's
regular
what I'm
meeting.
started.
That's fine.
Meeting start, I mean,
6.
Monday meeting start.
We good?
Yeah.
All righty. Are we ready to move on?
That was it.
All
That was the
right,
last
we
item.
need a close, we need to continue our closed session. What'd you say? Oh, August. Lisa has,
Oh, yeah, I looked at that, so I just peeked at that. Since we added one in January, then we can just take that one off in the last week of August before we go on, finish up the summer. So the last week in August on here is August the 24th and 25th meeting.
Yeah, that's a joint meeting with EDA.
Can we get them another day?
Move
We can move them up.
Do it tomorrow. You want to do this tomorrow? I'm fine with that, but I'm also superstitious. Last time we tried this, we had all sorts of crises that happened.
Yeah, crazy stuff happens.
Yeah, we had more meetings than ever.
That's just from today. I
Yeah,
just
I
want you
think
to
we
have a
did. I
copy.
think we had 4 meetings that month.
this is from Shannon, this is JR.
It was just a copy from the meeting today. Just want y'all to have a copy.
All right, well, what do we have on August?
Don't know.
What is the
It's just
consensus?
the joint meeting with EDA is on
Well, that
August
can be changed.
24th.
Yeah, we can move that.
We can move it.
Well, speaking of the joint meeting, are you okay with still having the joint meetings with your major boards?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, how many in favor of removing the 25th from the calendar?
Is it
24th and 25th?
24.
Want to do it backwards now? Left it here.
Oh, okay. Go.
Okay.
All right, Shannon?
You said the 25th, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm not favor of moving the 25th.
Yes.
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 I'll take that as a no.
I'm going to say
No,
no,
you
not,
got-
not.
I
but
thought that was a
that
council
defeats the
meeting.
point of of having the weekend, the long weekend.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Labor
If you're
Day
gonna meet on
weekend.
Monday, then you might as well meet on Tuesday.
Well, no, I was going to get the Monday too.
Right, that's what I thought. I
We're
got
just doing
confused.
one date at a time.
I got confused then, okay.
All right, let me try again. How many are in favor? I think I can hit a home run on this one. Removing the 24th and the 25th from the calendar.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes.
All right, so it's unanimous. So we redo the calendar, put the 6th of January, and then remove the 24th.
It's been a long day.
And
Sorry
found another
for the
day.
confusion.
No, I was,
All right, we good?
yes.
Good.
All right.
Before you leave, so the Mondays, are you taking them away
After June,
after June,
we're starting in June.
starting in
Only one Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we do the first? I need you to be specific
Yes,
about which
yeah.
one.
Right.
Can we
I don't
get
care.
rid of the first, the second Tuesday Monday before the second Tuesday?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Because we have the joint meeting for the,
That's fine.
Yes.
okay.
Whatever you want is
That's
fine.
what I,
So then we didn't have to vote on the 24th of August because it would have been caught up in there.
Right.
So this brings the 24th back.
No, no.
so can I ask a question? So we're adding the 6th and getting rid of the 13th?
No, we're keeping.
No,
we're keeping
it's just an additional.
He want all of them.
Additional meeting.
We're going to have 3 Monday meetings in January.
Just January?
Just
January.
January.
Okay.
And do we, because we're removing the 24th of August, do we want to put back on the calendar the 10th of August? Which I recommend that we do that.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, just because it's going to be a long stretch
Right.
without having
Right.
anything.
All right. All right. You're good. We got it. Shannon passed it. Shannon and Lisa and Shannon went to the JLOC. Do you want to
Yes.
report on that?
All right.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Absolutely. Well, it was a great presentation. The group, the innovative group made their presentation based on their findings to the JLOC Commission. And their findings appear to be favorable for us. There's some concern. I sat right next to Mead Spots, who is our lobbyist for the casino gaming legislation. And the one concern is that inside of the packet, there's a 27% tax rate that's supposed to go back to the Commonwealth. And Mead Spot said that that's kind of high. They would like to see it somewhere between 17 to 18%, no more than 20% payback to the state.
The casino operators?
Yes, would pay back to the state of Virginia. So that's one area that is of concern. The 5 localities are still included, but that's not to say that they may add some additional localities into the study when they go back in. Of course, it's going to be a reenactment of the clause in January when the session reconvenes. And it looks favorable for them to move forward with the study as you have it in your hand. It lists all of the highlights and the points. The biggest concern is the 27% tax that will be paid back. But someone brought up on the committee, I think it was Frank Ruff, brought up a question about if the 27% included what the city's share would be in addition to what the Commonwealth share would be. And I think that's something that they're going to work on. I thought the amount was kind of low. They were saying that the cities would get 3% back, and then the Commonwealth will get 24%. But I think, a 5% tax is what we get anyway. So, if they can get that, and then maybe the Commonwealth will get 15%, then that would be at the 20%. But that it will be a negotiable rate that our lobbyists, Mead Spots, would work on. We did have a representative there from Rush Street. I think it's Frank was there. So he did hear the information that he'll be able to take back to Neil on that behalf. Any questions of
Shannon,
what you see?
anything else?
The only thing I would add to that, everyone just needs to keep in mind, this was just the report back audit presentation. There was no discussion or anything centered around that. They'll take that up with the reenactment of the bill with the upcoming General Assembly. So that's important. The other thing that I thought was kind of important, I know the mayor and I had talked about this. Currently, we have the lottery folks that are set up that handles the state lottery, and they talked about having that existing state agency do it or making a standalone agency to do it. So that'll be interesting to watch how that evolves. That's just something. There's a cost associated with that. So.
Getting back in the interim, the 2-year interim, on these Queens lottery machines.
Hold that just for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's
That was in the study.
Yeah, that's really important. I wanted to point out that this was the JLARC's contractor, consultant that did this for JLARC.
Right.
That Senator Lucas has introduced on the Senate side the reenactment bill. And on the House side, it's been introduced by delegate Mary Knight. And they're looking for bipartisan support, and so that both bills have patrons of both sides of the aisle. Bristol is going to introduce its own bill for whatever reason. And so there are going to be multiple casino bills that are going to be, that they're going to have to come together on both sides. Whatever's introduced multiple times in the Senate will have to come out in one bill, and then in the House the same way. One of the things about the tax rate, the way I understand it, they used the 27% because what they did was a national average in which they threw out the extremes like Las Vegas and Atlantic City. And I think we need to be concerned as a corporate body about whether or not we think a flat tax works best or a graduated tax where the lower tax is on the tables, because we want to encourage the operator to have more tables because that's where the jobs are.
That's right. Good point.
Yeah.
Then let's get now to the vape machines that you're talking about, Bill.
Yeah, the Queen's machines, they're called. They're cropping up around town. In fact, many of the 7-Elevens and even restaurants now got, either 2, 3, 4. I've seen, I think, one 7-Eleven 5 machines.
Yeah.
So I think we need to find out if we can at least levy a machine and tool tax on them. Well, in the interim.
This was a big topic at the Virginia Municipal League, and I'm not trying to take credit, but because I drove it during the summer, and because I was so vocal, they made me the moderator for the session that took place on the first weekday. They had a panel that debated whether or not they're games of skill or games of chance. If they're games of skill, then they can be unregulated. If they're games of chance, then it's not legal.
Right.
But the takeaway is that it's a local decision that, okay, we can say that they're games of skill, and so we need to tell the people who levy the tax, start collecting the business license tax, have the wherever these machines are, this becomes part of what they report as the gross revenues, and then ask the city manager to find out, and the city attorney, do we need to amend any section of our code to say this is some type of personal property that can be taxed? So we tax it two ways. One is we tax it through the business license tax, and the other on the machine itself. Do we have a consensus to ask the city?
Absolutely.
All right, good.
Yes.
Mayor, if you could look, when you look at your package, they refer to those as gray machines.
Gray machines.
From page 77 over to page 82, it speaks of the machines of which you're speaking of, with there being absolutely they are unregulated by the state. They give you all of the information of the millions of dollars that the state and municipalities are losing. But right now, they are under review and consideration.
The other thing is
By the
that
state.
and it comes down to a legal issue. The Commonwealth Attorney for Charlottesville has claimed that they're illegal because they're games of chance.
Right.
Okay. And so that's got to be litigated. There are a good number of members of the General Assembly who feel that this is not our issue, let the courts decide. And so there are people on both Republicans and Democrats who are saying we don't have the stomach to take this on yet. In the interim, I think we ought to, let's find a way to get the revenue from the machines until it gets sorted
They will
out
be
either
there.
by the courts
Right.
or the General Assembly. And if it gets sorted out by the General Assembly, unless it's emergency legislation, it doesn't take effect until July 1. And so we may have the opportunity to get 6 months' worth of revenue. All right, have we done?
Yes.
It's good.
Is there a motion to go into closed session? Will you read the
Is it
motion?
same here?
Same way.
Okay.
Move to go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711A1
Deborah, will you stay?
for the purpose of interviewing, discussing, and considering prospective candidates for and appointees to boards and commissions.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready for the question. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Glover?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Mayor Rowe?
Yes, we're in closed session.